She moved into the place during her final year of college and her first year at her new corporate job. She loved the external architecture, but she also liked the space and the fact that the place had reasonable rent, especially for Boston.
Right.
Shortly after moving in, she was in her bedroom. She heard a noise upstairs, like someone had dropped a lot of glass in the attic. She called her boyfriend, who came over. They investigated the attic, which is full of tools and building supplies. But it was a bit of a mess, so they decided that some of the tools must have fallen over. He stayed most of the night. They watched movies and fell asleep on the couch. She had a dream that night that a man came down from the attic and walked through the house. He was an older man with features she describes as weather-beaten. She says for some reason in the dream, she thought he was a ship captain from a long time ago. So she started calling him the captain.
I see.
The next morning, she woke up to the sound of footsteps upstairs. Thinking it was her boyfriend, she went upstairs and found nothing. Thinking he might have been in the attic, she checked there as well, but found nothing there. She showered and headed to class before a full day of work, so when she got home, she was ready to eat and relax. So she began to eat her pizza while she watched some stuff she had on DVR, when she again heard a massive clatter from the attic. This time she went up alone, finding the attic unchanged from the night before. She called her landlord, explaining she kept hearing noises from the attic. Then she went back to the TV she was watching. She fell asleep on her couch and again dreamed about the sea captain. This time, though, he saw her and began to tell her something, but she could not hear him, like his lips were moving, but...
Gotcha. He was like... but not making any noise.
The next morning, just above where he had been standing in her dream, were a few drops of water on the ceiling. She again called her landlord and went to work. The landlord organized the attic a little bit more, hoping that would end the night noises. He also checked the pipes, and they all seemed okay, so he had no idea where the moisture was coming from. Now, she was not telling him about the dreams or the supernatural stuff.
Well, yeah. I mean, because you wouldn't.
For the next few months, that was the pattern. Occasional noises in the attic and occasional dreams about the sea captain. Sometimes he tried to talk to her, sometimes he would not. She got to where she didn't think much about it. It was around this time that her boyfriend moved in. Shortly after that, they began to see the occasional mist around the house. Also, things would disappear and reappear in different places. Like she had a hook for her keys, and her keys would disappear and reappear in the oddest places, like once she found them in the attic.
That would mess with you.
Also, the dreams began to change. She began to see another figure instead of the sea captain, a skulking humanoid with red eyes that she said scuttled like a rat. She called it the Rat Man and
the last thing. If Toast did that, I'd be like, all right, now, Toast, that isn't very funny. I kind of have to agree with her on that.
Well, she called this creature the Rat Man, and dreams about it terrified her. Mm-hmm. No real reason. Nothing she's written in here sounds very terrifying to me, but, I mean, dreams are funny things.
Depends on what you're seeing.
Also, her boyfriend, who had moved in by this point, started having coughing fits, and he doesn't smoke, vape, or otherwise do things that would cause the coughing fits.
Oh, wow.
Furthermore, he had bouts of weakness and malaise, and would remain tired no matter how much sleep he got. He would get irritable for no reason. He visited with the campus infirmary and actual doctors who all treated him for various things, but nothing seemed to alleviate these symptoms.
I see.
Also around this time, they began to see shadow people. She would wake up at night and see a shadow figure standing at the foot of her bed, seeming to stare at her. Or she would see them out of the corner of her eyes, but when she tried to look directly at them, nothing would be there. Her dreams would become more terrifying as the Rat Man would hunt her through the house. Outside the home, both she and her boyfriend graduated, and with her graduation, her corporate job gave her a promotion and a raise. She was transferred into a management program, so she still wasn't at home much. However, her boyfriend's health continued to be challenged, and he became a different, much less positive person.
Oh.
Not too long after this, her landlord decided he wanted to sell the property and gave her first crack at it. So she signed up for the first-time home buyers program, was approved, and bought the house. Doing research, this is when she discovered the building's history as a church and a mortuary.
I see.
It was around this time that she and her boyfriend were woken up by a howling coming from the attic. They rushed up to the attic but found nothing in the now empty space, and the howling faded within moments of them getting into the attic. Her boyfriend began to report the apparition of a priest that he would see around the place, and within a couple of weeks, Krysta was seeing it as well. They would get mists in the hallways, and still they saw shadow people. There would be sounds like bells and chains in the attic, but there's nothing up there since they purchased the place and the landlord had taken his things out.
What kind of beaver?
A few weeks ago, she and her boyfriend had a huge fight and broke up, and he moved out.
Aww.
In his new apartment, his health issues have faded entirely. Now Krysta is having problems. Other than working, she doesn't want to leave the house.
Well, of course she doesn't want to leave it because she's now working on becoming the owner of it. That makes sense.
She knows this is the house, but she doesn't feel comfortable outside the place. It takes a massive effort for her to leave, even to go shopping or hanging out with friends. She has also quit entertaining guests in the home. So the question she has for our listeners is this. Has anyone had similar issues, and if so, how did you deal with them?
Wow.
Now, I should point out that the reason she sent this story in is she heard our Halloween episode. And she had a story she thought fit with the stories we were telling for that episode. I have questions about this story, mostly because I couldn't find
a lot to corroborate.
Right. And so I don't know how much of this is true and how much of this is just fiction. I have heard of all of these things in other places, but even if she's not telling people about the supernatural stuff, I should be able to find, like, a church that used to be a mortuary that closed in Dorchester. I can't. So, what are your thoughts?
Ghost. Also, I wouldn't live in that church. I don't care. Churches are really cool. I'm sure a lot of money goes into them. But I wouldn't want to live in one. No thanks. No thanks. No. I think that if it's an honest situation that somebody's having to seek out whatever purification rituals that you believe in, I hear a lot of good things about, burning sage and taking back your power, and there are basic things, whether you're religious or not religious, prayer, and so many different avenues. Those would be my first things. I mean, definitely, you're the living person there, if it's your home and you want to stay in your home. But if it's something that's not good for you, you need to, obviously she's a little bit cognizant of that if it's actually going on, because she's reaching out to somebody. Even if it's just us, she's reaching out to somebody, so.
Yeah, if it's a real thing, I mean, heck, our chat group that we're in on Twitter, when I brought the subject up to them, multiple of them were like, sage that place, sage the heck out of it. And absolutely, I'd be down with that. Sage the heck out of it, and there's other simple things you can do that are supposed to frustrate and quell the spirits. So, bringing in a new broom, all sorts of stuff that you can do. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so that is, again, if it's real, that would be my advice, is sage the heck out of the place. Maybe even bring in someone who deals with these things on a spiritual level. I'm not saying get an old priest and a young priest, but
Yeah, probably.
There's all sorts of psychics and mediums that can deal with these sorts of things.
Absolutely.
And a lot of them don't even charge. It's just a matter of that's what they do. So, and Krysta, for your information, if we could have got a hold of it, we would have lived in a church.
What?
When we were living in California, when we were staying with Veronica, one of the places that we looked at was a former church.
Oh. Oh.
And we were going to rent it.
Oh. Oh. Oh.
Didn't wind up getting it, but we would have lived in a former church. I would have thought it was cool.
So would I.
But see, and that's part of my thing is, why would a sea captain be in a church? And where's the rat man coming from? I have questions. I'm not saying it's not true, because I don't want to cast aspersions at any of our listeners, but
did you reach out to her? And
I sent 3 separate emails that got no responses.
I got you.
So
respond to us. And, if you want to actually go into it more in depth, we'd be happy to.
Yeah, I just need to do some basic verification. I don't need to. I mean, I get that she has a corporate job and she doesn't want to put that out into the universe. Right. And I'll cooperate with all of that. But
sure. All right. Well, should we maybe
pause for a word?
Sponsors do some sponsoring?
Yep, that would be the thing to happen right now.
Sure.
Okay, so that brings us to our second story, the Lost Dutchman's Gold Mine.
I'm all about gold mining. As long as I don't have to go down in them. As long as I get the gold.
So, well, here's the story. Old German prospector. Now, we know he existed.
Yeah.
Named Jacob Waltz.
Yeah.
Waltz hunted the Superstition Mountains for years, looking for gold, which, by the way, the U.S. Assayer's Office says that there is almost certainly a massive load of gold in the Superstition Mountains.
Yeah.
And it is still unfound to this day.
That's superstition.
Well, that's just the name of the mountains, which I think is cool as heck.
Uh-huh.
If they weren't so dangerous and treacherous, I would live in the Superstition Mountains. Yeah, just because it'd be a cool address, Yeah, I'm just up in the Superstition Mountains.
That would be a cool address. New address on Amazon. Amazon would be like, I don't know how we're going to get that to you.
But the point is that it's called the Lost Dutchman's Mine because Dutch was the American cognate of Deutsch, which is German for German. If you're a German, you say, I'm Deutsch. D-E-U-T-S-C-H, I believe is how it's spelled. And so most Americans heard that and said Dutch. So this German found this vein of gold, and it became the Lost Dutchman's Mine. Because once he found it, he threw some ironwood on top of it, and some brush, and then a few local rocks. And he said that you couldn't, if you didn't know it was there, you wouldn't be able to tell. So he finds this gold mine, and he's living well, but not extremely well. And then he gets sick. And when he gets sick, he retires to this